Hello and welcome. In this section, we are going to learn about variables and data types. We have played around with it in our earlier section where we created our first web app. We used some variables and we used also some data types. We created a variable or variables. We also used a data type during our lecture where we created a basic web page that included a web form. So we used things like a string. A string basically is a data type. It's a type of data. Before you declare the variable in C#, you need to specify what type of data it is so that it knows what is playing with or what is dealing with. So the string here is the first thing you specify. You specify the data type, which is a string, which means it's going to be a text, followed by the name of the variable. Okay? Then once you give the variable a name, you use the assignment operator, which is the equals to sign, to give the variable a name or a value. In this case, the value is Rick. Because it's a string, you must enclose it in quotes. So you either use double quotes or single quotes. You can't mix them. You can't use a double here and then use a single here. The quotes have to match. Let's have a look at how you declare variables and assign values to them. We've already tried this in our lecture where we created the web form. So let's see how we do that. A variable is a container to store value. So a variable will store a single value. So for example, let's say this is our container here. Before we store anything, we need to know what type of data we are storing. So first of all, we give the variable or a name. This is a container. We give it a name called first name. Then we need to know what type of data we are going to store inside this container. It's going to be a string. Okay. So we've determined the name. We've identified the type of content or data it's going to store. So we can't mix them. We've already determined that it's going to store a string, which is a text. The next thing will be to assign a value to the variable or add something to it. So we assign a value using the equals to sign, which is the assignment operator. But for this illustration purposes, I've used an arrow instead to substitute for that equals to sign. Then we'll assign a value. The value, for example, I give it a name, Rick. So now we have declared the variable. First of all, we gave it a name. We determine the type of data, and then we assigned a value. So let's look at the example we did when we created the form. So this is our piece of code here from when we created our web form. So you notice here on line 19, this is the right format. This is where you should declare a variable. You start with the data type. The data type in this is a string. So I've identified what I'm going to store is going to be a string. Then I gave the variable a name, which is this. Then I use the assignment operator, which is the equals to give the variable a value. And I've given the variable a value of first name box. So that means whatever we type into that box, first name, will be the value. Same thing here on line 20. It's exactly the same thing. So that's basically how you will declare and assign value to a variable. You data type first, which is string, followed by the name, and then you assign the value, and then you give the value. So this should be the right format. String. If your storage, your variable is going to be a string, you need to specify it first. followed by the name you're giving the variable, and then an assignment operator. You use that to give the variable a value. Okay, so in this case, I've used that, I'm giving it a value of Rick, and then you have to use a semicolon to terminate it, to end the statement. So this is one statement, and you must end it with a semicolon. So if you notice here in the code, all these statements, every line here ends with a semicolon. That means when the code is being read, the computer will know that that's the end of one line of code. It jumps onto the other line. So you need to use a semicolon to determine, just like when you're reading a book, you need the full stop to know that the paragraph stops there, and so on. So the semicolon is used by the computer when the code is being compiled to know that this is one statement, one line of code, this is another line of code, and so on.